Chris and Sarah, welcome to the show. How on earth are you guys doing?
We are good.
I mean, we're good.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. If you were to ask us maybe a week and a half ago, we weren't doing so well, but now we're doing pretty well.
We're doing well.
You doing well? That's good to hear. Because when I last spoke to you before, I think you're flying out to Mexico. I'd done a podcast episode with you guys on yours, and excitement. You're getting back out there. A lot has changed since then, so we are going to go into it in a bit. But I'm glad to hear you're doing well because there's been a lot of change. But can you tell listeners and viewers where you are right now?
Yeah, we are home in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So this is our home base. So we actually flew back from Mexico 2 days ago, and we're just here for 2 weeks, just hunkered down, getting work done, doing stuff like this, catching up with friends. So it's good to be back.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're going to go back into the backstory and early travel. Chris had no input on that one, so that's fair enough.
I was like,
Talker.
I'm just like, you know what? We did fly back 2 days ago from Mexico, where I'm just sort of reeling from that. I mean, obviously, we've been doing the Pan American Highway, and so.
Well, let's say we've been trying to do the Pan American. We can't seem to get out of Mexico.
No, Mexico has gripped a hold of us, and it's like, we love you. And we're like, you know what? We love you too, Mexico, but it's time to add some distance. You know, distance is good for the relationship sometimes, and it's not letting us get away.
Actually, let's go into it. Why not, as you're here? For the listeners and the viewers, you are trying to do the Pan American Highway in your campervan with Kramer, your dog. And when I met you, which was about 6 months ago, something like that, I think you were kind of starting it, having a break for the summer because you had things to do in the summer, some events, etc. And then going back to it after the summer, which took longer than usual, I think, which you guys can explain. So when I sort of organised this interview, you're so in Mexico, I was like, I don't think I can catch him now because you're driving down. So give us a bit of a high level sort of summary of what's happened so far.
Yeah. So when we met you, we were home for TravelCon back in May, and we came home for TravelCon for supposedly like 2 weeks, 10 days, something like that. And we ended up staying for 3.5 months. Was not planned. There were some, life circumstances that kept us home, but it ended up being for the best. It was a great summer. And we left our truck in Mexico City. That's where we left it for TravelCon in May. And as of today, the truck is about 5 hours south of Mexico City. It's October.
It's October. So what happened? So we finally got the gumption to fly back to Mexico. We're like, we have to fly back after this.
It wasn't like we were dodging it, though.
No,
we were just home because we were enjoying it,
Yeah, so we finally flew back. We went, on the outside, the truck seemed perfectly fine. We're like, wow, we left it for 3 months. It's perfect. Then we get inside, everything seems to be normal. And then all of a sudden, the first thing that we noticed was that we have a Starlink satellite that we use for our Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
That wasn't working for whatever reason. And then on the outside of the truck, I started noticing some discrepancies. We have floodlights on the top of our truck, and they had broken off. Like 2 of them had broken off. And I'm like, what had happened? And
Still don't know.
I think it was just like really bad weather is really what happened. And so we're dealing with that. And then
the water pump broke in our thing, which also affected our water filter. And if you know Mexico, you can't drink the water there.
Yeah.
So we end up getting it fixed up to where we can shower, but we can't drink the water in our own things. We're having to go buy extra water. And then
this was a week of literally no showers. We're trying to
smelled really bad.
Smelled awful in that truck camper.
But then we ended up, I feel like we have to share this story because it's just one of those like horrifying, but also like kind of laugh about it now. But we got a hotel for one night, just a cheap hotel in Mexico City because we smelled so bad and we just needed a break. We just needed to get out of that truck camper for just a second. So we got this like $50 a night hotel in Puebla, Mexico, and they only did valet. And as we were leaving, we were checking out, the valet starts to pull our truck up. And Chris decides it's a good chance to go ahead and make a wisecrack joke with the other valet who was supposed to be helping the other guy, like guide it in and make sure we didn't hit anything. Chris, what did you tell the guy?
I said, mi casa, like that. It was like my house. And he just started laughing. And then we heard this loud pop, crack, like that. And the guy... There was a telephone pole, the wire was hanging low, and our truck grabbed a hold of it and ripped the telephone pole out of the concrete.
And that was like day 3 of being back in Mexico.
That was day 3. And we're like, this is off to a really great start. And mind you, like when we first flew back into Mexico, before we even got to the truck, immediately after the airport, within 5 minutes, we got pulled over by this guy who looked like a police officer.
He had a gun. I'm not sure if it was real or fake.
So
but
he was like, pull over. And we're just like, I'm not going to pull over. And he kept doing it. And I'm like, fine. And the Enterprise guy, we had rented a car to go to the truck. And the Enterprise guy reminded me, he was like, make sure you never give your documents over to anybody. Show it to the window and that's it. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And so the police officer came over and he was trying to grab my license. And I was like, no. I'm not going to do that. And he's like, why don't you trust me? And I remember saying, I said, I don't trust you because the Enterprise man told me not to trust you, which was probably not the best thing to say. And then he looked at me and he's like, do you know why I pulled you over? And I'm like, I have no clue, absolutely no clue. And he's like, it's because your dog's head, Kramer, his little head was hanging out the window. We had cracked the window in the back.
like 4 inches.
Like, so he could like put his little, like he wasn't hanging out the window. He was like, that is so dangerous for the dog to be out the window like that. And then meanwhile, there's like, a family of 5 on a moped driving, through Mexico City. And
not their biggest concern they have going on. It was just like, welcome back to Mexico. It was like foreshadowing, but we had no idea it was foreshadowing coming back.
Yeah. So then
we got really sidetracked here. James, you can rein us in if you need to like get us back to your topics at hand.
But
how did you get out of it? Yeah. Of that.
Yeah.
Oh, we just like, honestly, I was like,
play stupid.
You play stupid. You act like, I'm like, hey, I don't speak that great of Spanish. But the one thing he did know, or we both understood, was like when I said, I would like to go to the station to talk. And that was a big no for him. He's like, I don't have time to go to the station. I said, well, I'm not going to pay you anything until I go to the station and we can all talk together.
Good shout.
And then immediately he was like, I'm too busy, and wrote off.
Yeah,
so.
Fair enough. Yeah, we had a similar situation in Oman. Not really that bad, but because the Omani police, they kind of, how can I put this, a bit more moral, I'd say. That they work for the king. It's all about, all for the family, and they are supposed to be proper, right? But we did get stopped in Oman, just on the road randomly towards our next place, and he pulled us over. I don't speak much Arabic, maybe 10 words. And he did ask, do you speak Arabic? It's the first thing he said. And I said no, because I was like, I don't want to start speaking Arabic because he might start speaking to me. And he just looked at his mate and went, I can't be bothered. Just carry on. But you get that 5-10 seconds like, oh, what have you done? And you drive down and like, oh God, we're in trouble here. But that's a bit of a close call. But yeah, the fact he gave his mate a look like, no, I can't deal with this.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
In Mexico, it's gringos.
Yeah, gringos. I find if you start to tear up and pretend to cry, that they get away from you even faster.
The emotional angle, I love that. Yeah.
Play the victim. Gosh, we really derailed that. I'm so sorry.
Well,
I feel like we're processing still. It's been a really emotional 4 weeks, so we're just like working through it.
This is raw. Yeah, this is raw.
So then after that, you also went to Oaxaca, right? And that's where I kind of was following your journey. So then what's happened since then?
So we went to Oaxaca. Things were good for the most part. We were like waiting on these parts. We ended up having family ship a new Starlink down to us.
Yeah.
Plus, like one of the pieces for the water filter, which Mexican customs, other like practically a scam. You pay to ship this thing down there, sits in customs for days, and then they're like trying to claim that we're trying to import 29 T-shirts to resell in Mexico. We were not. There was one T-shirt that his parents put in there for padding to protect the Starlink.
And apparently that's a big no-no.
Oh, wow.
And we had other people reach out.
Yeah.
Like we had other people reach out. They're like, yeah, never put clothing or anything like when shipping it to Mexico.
It was
something like that.
Yeah.
So that was a learning experience.
Forget drugs or forget guns. Just don't put T-shirts in there.
T-shirts. And then to claim some random number like 29. I'm like, well, you get that. Anyway, so after it sat in customs for 7 or 10 days, we finally said, you know what, just send it back. Like they're going to send it back on their dime. So we had them send it back to our parents' house, which is another reason why we're home right now, is to get the things that we were trying to get to Mexico that we couldn't. Go ahead.
Oh, no. So we ended up going to Home Depot, buying a Starlink at Home Depot because it was way cheaper. And for those of you who don't know, like we still work on the road. And so we need internet, like to continue our travels, right?
We rely on it more than what we'd like to admit. But it's part of our life.
Yeah. So then we do that. We grab that. And then we're like, hey, we're going to leave Oaxaca now. Let's just go. Like we had patched the water thing. The water thing wasn't as big of a deal, so we could still travel.
Yeah.
And then we started going out of Oaxaca through the mountains down to Veracruz. And we made it about an hour and a half, 2 hours in.
Well, according to Google, we had really been driving for 3 hours because we move at like 30 miles an hour maximum.
Right.
Yeah.
Tiny little distances are really taking us like past lunchtime.
It was like, oh, it was such a long trip. It was beautiful, but
Gorgeous.
such a long trip. And then all of a sudden this like van started honking at us and was like, pull over. And I'm like, okay, it's not a cop, so I'll trust this guy. And he gets out and he was like, where are you headed? I'm like, we're heading to Veracruz. And he's like, nobody's going to tell you this. He's like, but this is the only road to get there. And at the very end of the road, the bridge is out. So by the time you make it there, you're going to have to turn around and go all the way back. And so he had saved us a ton of time. We're like, thank
nice
you
guy.
so much.
Yeah. Unreal.
But then that's when things started going wrong with our truck because the mountains were no joke.
Thankfully we had already driven, the section that we had to turn around and redrive. So we knew what was coming up. But it was after lunch. It was like 1 or 2 o'clock by this point. It's rainy season in Oaxaca, which means like mudslides and just every day, like you could set your clock to it. Like you're watching it just rains, pours every day, thunder, lightning, and then it goes away. But this mountain has no guardrails. It's steep. There's obviously been mudslides recently. Like the roads are just like completely muddy. And so we knew that on top of dangerous road conditions, like there was going to be rain too. Well, we start to drive. I hit the brakes as we're going down the mountain and the brakes drop to the floor and there's air in the brake lines, like completely. And I'm like pumping, trying to pump them. And finally I get like a tiny bit of brakes, but it was just not working right.
Yeah.
And I usually use the engine brake too. Like it's a manual, so I usually put it in a lower gear to brake, but the car also was trying to run away with itself. And we were like, what is going on? Like usually it, would slow down, but it's like a 15% grade. And the engine is so loud. And I could not figure out what was wrong. We were stuck in the middle of nowhere. We had no cell signal. And then we hear this pop. And we're like, what is that? And we look in the back mirror.
The smoke is billowing out of the truck.
Anyway, we're just going to go ahead and jump ahead and say that we diagnosed the problem. We ended up having to call a tow truck because the conditions were just too bad. We would not have made it off that mountain alive. Like, I'm convinced we would have probably died.
Died or been...
Yeah, like it would have been really, really ugly for the rig and us. But
it would make for a great YouTube video.
Of course, content and all that.
I mean, naturally, Chris grabbed the camera anyway as we're being towed off this mountaintop.
Yeah, I saw that picture of that video, yeah.
Never miss the opportunity for drama.
Yeah.
Lives are pretty boring, and so when we do have something like that, we have to grab it.
Grab it.
But yeah, anyway, so we got towed off the mountain. Thankfully, tow trucks in Mexico are not that expensive. I think we paid $125 to get towed off, which would have been well over $1,000 in the U.S. and made it off safely. But now we're back in the States waiting to get the part to fix the truck. So
yeah. So how's your day going, James?
Yeah, got up, had breakfast, and just milling about.
This is like our therapy session with James today.
Brilliant. Okay, that's a lot to unpack there, isn't there? Mexico is a bit of a challenge. And so do you have a rough date in mind where you might go back?
Yeah. We're supposed to be on a plane. Well, we don't have a ticket back yet, but hopefully no more than 2 weeks. The piece that our truck needs, if you don't know, we have a Land Cruiser, and this is like one of the most reliable rigs in the world. But it is like one of this one specific piece happens to be sold out all over North America. And so it either has to come from Japan, Australia, or Europe. And so we chose a place that's coming from Europe somewhere. Yeah. They said it should be here in a few days, but we'll see.
Surprisingly enough, it was we're always trying to like save a buck here or there. Like,
tell me about it.
We're the cheapest people alive.
Yeah, I'll join you in that.
Can be expensive. And so like getting here to the States, like flying out of Oaxaca wasn't real. It was just a really expensive option. And then we started looking at like renting cars to go there. So we actually rented a car from Oaxaca, and in Mexico to drop it off at a different location is so extremely expensive, because we were like, all right, we'll just rent a car from Oaxaca, drop it off in Mexico City. And it was going to cost over $1,000 to do that.
That's the same for anywhere in the world, isn't it? In my experience.
Yeah.
It's definitely more expensive. I mean, this was just like astronomical. It was crazy expensive.
Expensive. So it was actually cheaper for us to rent the car for 3 or 4 weeks. And it cost $92 to rent it for 3 or 4 weeks. And then we dropped it off at an airport parking garage. And it's cheaper for us to leave it there for 4 weeks and then drive it back to Oaxaca.
By hundreds of dollars. So I guess, right. We do have to be home in like 2.5, or back in Mexico in 2.5 weeks, because otherwise I guess that rental car is going to be reported stolen. There is a deadline here.
There is a deadline.
Okay, so what's interesting is when I met you guys and I said, I'm going to be doing my trip. At the time of TravelCon, we're like, we're probably going to miss each other because you're going back to Mexico. You'll be well past El Salvador. And now I'm like, I think it's possible. And even I don't think you're gonna make El Salvador by the time I'm there.
We cannot get out.
I don't think so either. Because we cannot get out of Mexico. So, thankfully in Oaxaca, we have an amazing campground that like the truck is stuck at. And it's like we can't complain about where we're stuck at. We're thankful to be alive. We're thankful that we're at a reasonable place that it's relaxing to be
so nice.
But yeah, so hopefully, when you're down in El Salvador, hopefully we'll be just crossing the border and we'll be able to meet up.
Well, I think the very least, because I'm going west and you're going north.
Yep.
I guess I'm going north. You're going south.
Yeah,
we should cross at some point. So that'd be pretty cool.
I think we will cross paths.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah,
hopefully. This is all part of the adventure. It's just like this is the first mechanical issue we've had. So I think it's sort of like it's just part of it. Like we, told the story about losing the brakes on the side of a mountain, and some fellow overlanding friends who have overlanded like Africa and everything. He's like, congratulations, like you guys are officially overlanders now. Yes,
that's the badge of
lost
honor.
Brakes.
Yeah, badge of honor. Yeah.
And why doesn't the campground host like you, Chris? What's that about? And Kramer, for that matter.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I think so. The campground is it's a really nice campground. And I don't know when this caretaker sleeps. He's literally up. I kept the dash cam on the truck on accident, and I have footage of him at like 2:45, 3 in the morning cleaning. So this dude, he never sleeps. So one, I think he's sleep deprived, but two, he's very particular about his garbage and the garbage at the campground, like very, very, very particular. And I did not know this the first day that we were there. And so Kramer had to go number 2, and I picked it up like the sign said, and I threw it away in the general trash can, like anywhere else I would do in the world. And he likes to dig through the trash to separate it. And so I think Kramer was a little bit of a surprise, our dog, to him. And so he let me have it in Spanish. I didn't know what he was saying, but I understood everything at the same time.
We got dog. We kept hearing him say dog over and over. Like, oh,
I'm like I think it's because of that. So, yeah. And then ever since then, he smiles at Sarah, big grin, everything. But me, he's like, you're evil.
Yeah, but he does have a bone to pick with Chris.
He does.
That's so strange, isn't it? Okay.
It is.
Yeah. What's dog in Spanish? Is it perro? Perro.
You roll my R's.
Yeah, Moscato is pet. Right, yeah.
So between those two, we usually know they're talking about Kramer.
Yeah.
Well, you think, anyway.
Yeah,
yeah, he's not calling Chris a dog.
He was pointing at me and saying perro, so
Oh, gosh.
Right, that's a great way to start the podcast. So we jumped ahead there. That's great. Let's go back just a little bit further. How did you guys meet? And what's your sort of travel background story? Like, as families, did you used to travel when you're younger? Where did the interest come from?
Oh, man. So, no, neither of us really traveled growing up. My family took a trip to our family cottage in Michigan every summer. And then we did Disney a couple times. And that was pretty much it. I had never been across the Mississippi until in college. I biked across America, which is actually how we met.
Where are you from?
Oh, I'm from Tennessee. Georgia, Tennessee area. So southeast for both of us.
Yeah. I'm from Kentucky.
Yeah.
So the Mississippi's always like that halfway point in America, typically.
Yeah, St. Louis is on the Mississippi, and it's the gateway to the West. We had never been west. Neither of us, our families didn't. We were very middle class, and so taking grand trips, or especially international trips, just didn't happen. Like we were on a budget. Yeah. So we actually met biking across America. It was both of our first times. We'd actually both biked across America twice. But on the second trip, we were both tour leaders. And so it was kind of like camp counselor, love story kind of thing. So we met biking, and then 2 years later got married.
Yeah. And bicycling across America, we were doing it with a nonprofit, which was great. But it was also an excuse to sort of travel, because in my mind, I'm like, when am I ever going back to Seattle, Washington to start? I've always wanted to go there, but I've never been there. I'm like, this is so cool to be able to like raise money for people in need, but then also travel a very different way too.
Yeah. Yeah. For both of us. We got to see places and experience things that, the U.S. is so diverse, but we also lived in sort of a bubble of our little culture, and then getting out and seeing people are exactly the same, but then also very much not the same. And just getting to see these little microcultures from Montana to New York City to, it was incredible. And it definitely we both realized we loved being uncomfortable, like doing adventurous kind of things, but not necessarily in a glamorous way. Like, don't get me wrong. I would love a good 5-star hotel more often than what I get it. But we also really understood that we loved the back roads, like whether or not it was on a bike or a car, like we got to see places that most people never get to see. We rolled into these communities that were 300 people, and they were hours from the nearest city. And, just seeing that side of the world just was incredible. And I think that's sort of what spurred our van life adventures. We kind of joke that we met in a van driving the support van for this Across America tour, and then we lived in a van a couple years later.
Yeah.
I think UK has a similar thing with much smaller scale, of course, but you do grow up in a little bubble, even though London's only like 2 hours away, but it does feel like it's a flight away, where it's a completely different world. So I think even though UK is much smaller, if you go to university, for example, or college in another city, that is like a new experience. And people might laugh at that because it takes, 3-hour drive to get from Norwich, where I'm from, to Nottingham, for example. But Nottingham's like a completely different culture, Robin the Hood, all that sort of stuff, right? So I think it's kind of good that people get out there. But I do think at that age, you kind of push, right? Sometimes it's easy to say, no, I'll stay in my bubble, right? Because everything around the corner, right? Your mates, your football, whatever you play, your music. But like getting out there is the first step, I think, when you sort of approach that late teens, I think, when you start to go out in the world. So did you find that when you first went out there to the west side that, oh wow, like this is completely different? Because I've traveled through America, not as much as you guys, but I think stopping in somewhere like South Dakota compared to maybe being in New York is completely different.
Totally different.
Absolutely. Well, can I ask you a question about the UK? Because, so, you talk about these different, like, it's like 3 hours away, right? So when you're growing up and you hear about these towns, do people that you're growing up with or like in that community, do they say that it's like, oh, that's so unsafe, like you don't want to go there or anything like that? I mean, in the US, that happens all the time. And that's part of the reason why we didn't travel as much. Not part of the reason, but like...
It was more financial.
But people always have this misconception of like, people in Tennessee, like my neighbor, he's 89 years old. But every time I tell him we're going out west, he's like, I hope you live to tell the tale. Like, he's so scared.
Every time we go back to Mexico, he's like, I'm never going to see you again.
Yeah, and he's never been there. I think the only place he's ever been is Jamaica. So other than that, but I didn't know if that happened in the UK as well, what's in the UK.
I think it depends how you grow up. And for me, definitely yes, because my dad doesn't have a passport. So anywhere that's outside of Norwich, which is on the east side, even going to Ipswich, which is only 45 minutes to an hour down the road, is like, oh, we're going there. So when I told him I was going to London, he's like, yeah, you're not coming back alive, are you? It's just, there's 8 million people there. I think 8 million people are surviving every day down there. So I think it's okay. But I think what you get in UK is different reputations. So maybe London is like a different world because it's so multicultural and it's so big and there's lots of options there, right? But if you think something like Nottingham, as an example, it's got a reputation, believe it or not, for UK as being a place where gun crime is slightly high. So it's called Shottingham. So I think that's the rumor.
Oh gosh.
So yeah, that's what you hear when you grow up. Like Liverpool, Manchester's probably known for like obviously its music and it's way north. Like, oh yeah, that's over there. Completely different accent, different way of doing things, and also probably like there's a bit of class stuff going on. Maybe you think they're a bit poorer up there, which is a really unfair generalization, but you do kind of think that. And then like places like Newcastle, like on the border of Scotland, you're like, where is that? Like that is so far north that we don't even consider it. So I think different places have different reputations. Maybe safety is probably left to London, maybe, which just by math it is a bit more unsafe because there's more people, right? It's just going to happen.
For sure.
So I think it's more based on reputation of like history because there's so much history there. You do know which city has got going for it. Could be music, could be sport, could be crime, whatever it is.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I think that's why people are so interested in traveling UK because they dip round from Liverpool and go to the Cavern Club where the Beatles played, right? And it's like all that sort of stuff. And they dip across to Leeds, like the heart of Yorkshire, and they're probably thinking Game of Thrones, maybe. Like, this is where it is. And then down to London, we all know London, right? So
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, super interesting.
We'd love to visit.
Yeah.
Neither of us have ever been to London.
We've never been there.
Scotland.
In Ireland.
Yeah. So we'll get there one day.
Yeah, one day.
In Scotland,
if
where
we
did
ever
you
get
go?
out of Mexico.
In Scotland, where did you go?
Oh gosh, that was my first international trip ever. I paid my own way when I was in high school to go with a group.
Oh, wow.
And so I was really young, but went to Edinburgh, Glasgow, Isle of Skye. I mean, it was so fast. I was like 10 days, but I remember loving it. I remember thinking it was absolutely gorgeous. We were there in June and it was just changed my life. I mean, it did nothing but fuel. I wanted to travel. So, I think you asked earlier, like, how did you guys start by wanting to travel? And like a lot of people, it was the yellow bound National Geographic magazines for me that my grandparents had every single issue from when I first started. And I used to just read through those and see the pictures. And yeah, a little bit by little bit, we started traveling on a budget.
Was that obviously yourself, Sarah? But Chris, what was your trip that maybe really kicked off the wanderlust, maybe internationally?
You know, my very first international trip was to El Salvador.
Oh, wow, there you go.
Yeah, and
See you there.
Yeah.
Reunion.
And
Hopefully we'll get there.
it was my first time ever out of the United States, and so seeing seeing it's so drastic, you know, especially with me. I grew up in suburbia, like everything's white picket fence, you know, cul-de-sac, like it just, nothing's changed. We know every store is the same, everything like that. And going to El Salvador, it was definitely, we went there on like a missions trip. We were helping build a church for somebody. And it was just fascinating seeing the way that the locals would build like their process, and then you have the Americans coming in saying, hey, we build it this way, and like the Americans think that they're right, and the El Salvadorians are like, no, we're right, we've been building, like, look at that building down there. And so it was just super fascinating. And the people, I just remember the people were so nice. Like, if anything, we weren't really down there to build anything, it was just make a connection with people, which was super cool. And then I remember the pupusas, which was awesome.
Okay.
I remember the food. So.
I've heard about these pupusas our entire relationship. I've got to try them if we ever get out of Mexico.
And maybe I've probably built them up too much. I mean, like, as a 15-year-old in a different country, I'm just like, this is amazing. And I do remember having Pizza Hut in El Salvador. And I'm like, this is the best pizza I've ever had in my life. Far better than anything in Italy, you know, just like this is.
But like American chains in other countries typically tend to be better than in America. Like, we had a couple moments of weakness recently in Mexico. We're like, we're going to order Little Caesars. And Little Caesars is so much better than Mexico.
I don't know what they've done. Like, here in the States, Little Caesar tastes like plastic. Hate Little Caesars. But there in Mexico, I'm like, you know, they've seasoned this cheese. Maybe it's Oaxaca cheese. I don't know what it is, but it's very good. Yeah.
That's another topic.
What I found weird in Australia, when I worked in the kitchens, all these chefs, right, in the mine sites in North and West Australia, they cook all day, right, and they cook them fresh food, like veg, pastries, everything's fresh. And yet their dinner is McDonald's. And I was like, I just don't understand what's going on here. And they're like, I don't know what they do over there, like this particular McDonald's next to the campsite, but they do something that's amazing. The seasoning, we go there for dinner.
So good.
I was like, okay. Like, you get all the chefs in their chef gear, right? And me, just going in a big like minibus to drive into McDonald's. I found it so strange.
Oh, that's so.
It's really funny. There's a lot of truth in that.
That makes me feel so much better about my travel decisions. So I'm like, yeah.
Hey, you know, when you've been traveling internationally, I'm sure you have your own things too. Like, when you're traveling, that you just, after a while, you're like, you may be in Mexico or India or whatever, and you eat the local cuisine, and eventually you're like, I just need something that's not curry or not tacos. I just need something different for a while. And then there's McDonald's. It's just sitting there. I don't know what it is for you since you're British,
know what it
but
is.
Yeah, you need something that's somewhat different.
Yeah.
I think that's a test of which cuisine is your favorite. This is what I say in my podcast, where, you know, what cuisine can you think of internationally that you have where you don't feel the need to go and dip into McDonald's? Because I'm like, you need to be honest with yourself here. Like, what can you eat almost every day without fail? I think for me, that's only Indian and Thai food. I think for me.
Really?
So I feel like I don't need McDonald's, but I think everything else, I probably need that break. But I don't know what you guys think about that.
I mean, I haven't been to Japan, but I feel like Japanese food I could do between the sushi and the ramen and stuff. I feel like I could do that. Thai's great. And even, I know people say Iceland food is really gross because it's not very diverse, but I actually really enjoy food in Iceland because it was very bland. It was just like soup, like fish soup every day.
Fish.
And then like, I loved that. And so I feel like that's one thing. Like, I'm a soup person. Like, it was cozy and
yeah. I think our problem when it comes to like food in Central America, it's delicious.
It is good,
and very good. But a lot of it is so meat heavy, and we eat meat, but some of it is just like
it's so greasy and so meaty.
Yeah, and like you feel it after a while, right? And so it's been harder to find like healthier choices, like especially in Central America. Like,
yeah, especially if you're eating like the locals, like, you know. I feel like less healthy food is typically the cheapest. You think of like frying and potatoes in America and that kind of thing. Like, those are usually not the healthiest, but they're also more affordable. So like when you eat like the locals at street food, there's not a lot of vegetables besides like some guacamole on the taco. But
cilantro,
cilantro, green. But we do have a camper, so we cook in a lot, which helps. But I do have to admit, I'm a little burned out on tacos, which I didn't think was possible. But I've had to step back for a minute and say, okay,
But I will say that, I mean, we've been eating like street food, all of that, and it's been delicious.
Oh,
but
yeah.
that's what we were really kind of taking a break from. We're like, oh, like I can't stomach this. But then we had at the campground, we had this local Mexican woman. She was like, hey,
So sweet,
it's
yeah.
for Independence Day. I made this. It was like almost like a quesadilla, but filled with black beans. Is
So
essentially.
good.
It was one of the best meals I've had in Mexico.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I need to go to somebody's house and eat because these restaurants are doing it for me right now.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
We were sort of knocking on doors and seeing who will let us in.
Yeah.
I tell you what, Mexico's really got you, isn't it?
They've really gotten us.
It's testing you, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, like we love Mexico. Like it's incredible. But at the same time, I just feel like, I think it's the lack of being able to leave. Like we don't have that freedom
Sure.
to leave, that we're just like frustrated. But if somebody's listening to this and they want to go to Mexico, be a digital nomad vacation, go.
Well,
like it's people are so nice.
And I think people forget just how big Mexico is. I mean, it is a huge country and it's so diverse. You know, when you enter through the border at the northern part, like it's all desert and I feel like that's what people think of when they think of Mexico.
Yeah.
Like in the States anyway, but like, and then you go further south and you start hitting mountains that look like the Smoky Mountains here in Tennessee, or
What Oaxaca looks like.
like that's what Oaxaca looks just like that, and was blew us away. And then you have the Yucatan; it's all perfect beaches and everything. So I think it's just a big country,
Big country.
and we weren't ready for that, you know. But we know now.
We've seen a lot of it.
Yeah, you've been there quite a while. Okay, I want to come just quickly back to together when you are together traveling wise. What was the first trips maybe together that maybe got your ideas? Obviously, we're coming to YouTube and podcast in a minute, and also your trip now. But like, what was the first sort of travels you were going on?
Thailand. When we first got married, we were living in Seattle, and like real long story short, Chris actually lost his job a week after we got married. And so we had a very tiny little savings account, you know, because we were newlyweds and just out of college and all those kind of thing. And one of our friends actually lives in Thailand. He was like, hey, why don't you guys come over here? You can live really cheap. Come spend a couple months over here. And so we said, all right. So we bought $700 plane tickets, which I wouldn't recommend getting a budget airline to Asia because it was a really long flight. But we got $700 round trip tickets to Thailand, spent 2 months there, and fell in love with Asia. And we'd never been anywhere like that before. Never been to Asia. And we both were just blown away.
We both keep wanting to go back.
We haven't
missed Asia so badly.
Yeah, we've only been to a couple places in Asia, but consistently, like I think that's the one continent I didn't expect to fall in love with. Like when I grew up wanting to travel the world, like I wanted to see everything, but Asia for some reason didn't really resonate with me. Like I guess the history didn't fascinate me as much or whatever. But then I went there and it blew me away. I love Asia, so Thailand was the first one for us.
Which part of Thailand was that in?
Mostly Chiang Mai, actually.
Yeah,
we loved the mountains. I mean, I know a lot of people go to the beaches and stuff, but our friends lived in Chiang Mai, so that's where we went. And, you know, they gave us a motorbike to borrow and 2 helmets, and they said, have fun. And we made it out, never having a wreck. Almost lost a foot one night.
Yeah. We went on the superhighway and we told our friends, we were like, oh yeah, we drove the moped on the superhighway. And they're like, you did what? Like,
That's what it was called. This is the super highway. And this thing went like 40 miles. Yeah. But I mean, it was a fascinating trip. Like we got to see, you know, we went up to the border of Myanmar, Burma, and, you know, saw refugee villages. And then we went down to the beach and also saw a little bit of Bangkok. And we actually happened to be there when the king died, which was really like a culturally significant moment because he was the longest reigning monarch in history. He had been king since World War II as a kid.
like the entire country overnight wore black. Like as soon as he passed away, every store, every mannequin, everything was in black clothing. And so we had a bright clothing with us and we're like, you know what, we're here for longer. Like we need to buy black clothing and just, you know, be a part of it.
Yeah.
And we had several like, you know, Thai people come up and they're like, thank you so much for just wearing black. Like that means a lot to me. And it was really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we got to go to like a vigil after he passed. Like they hosted this in each of the major towns in Thailand. And I don't know how many people showed up. It was probably 100,000 people showed up to this botanical garden in Chiang Mai. And definitely one of the most vivid memories I have of being there, just like seeing these people like cry because it was like he had been such a great leader for them. And it was just, anyway, yeah. So I think that for a lot of reasons, we fell in love with traveling just because of that. But what do you have to add? I feel like I'm doing all the talking.
No, I mean, you're talking great. So it's been great. Yeah.
What year was that when the king died?
16. So 8 years ago. Yeah.
8 years
I just remember
ago.
when I first landed in Thailand, so 3 years before,
Okay.
first sort of like hard rule, if you like, we get told is don't disrespect the royal family. And what they mean by
Right.
that is an example would be, you wouldn't do this, but if you had some money, just don't stamp on it or spit on it or whatever. It's like, okay, well, I don't think we'll do that. But so they're very strict on sort of rule, I suppose, which is great because I think there's not many rules in Thailand, but I think that's one of them.
Yeah, no, for sure. We were told don't talk about the royal family. Like, even if it's praise, like, just save talk for behind closed doors at home.
Yes.
Like, don't talk about it.
Yeah.
And like, it's technically a rule in Thailand where you're supposed to have a picture of the king in your house. Like, and everybody, so that was the other weird thing is like, we were there and everybody loved the king. Like, he was such a good king. He had done a lot for Thailand. But then people were really nervous about the son taking over. So like we were there during this whole like controversial, like everybody's like, what's going to happen? Like, are there going to be like riots and that kind of thing? So like actually went under military control while we were there. So it was like a really weird, like witness this transition to people's like fear, but also like what's going to happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
Super interesting. We've never seen anything. I mean, we go through the chaos of an election every 4 years in the US. Here we are again, but it was just totally different.
Yeah.
The chaos, great word.
Yeah.
But Thailand's so diverse, isn't it? As a country, it's a bit like US in a sense where you can find whatever you need, whether that's mountains, a bit of jungle or forest or beaches or even islands. Like there's that eclectic mix of different types of travel there.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. I feel like the people that we would talk to before going there would always go to like the beach part of Thailand.
Sure.
And
for sure.
And it's beautiful. It looks like Neverland from Peter Pan, in my opinion. Like, I mean, this was like beautiful, but the mountains there are just like, none of our friends talked about the mountains until after we went there. And I'm like, oh, it's just gorgeous. It's so beautiful there.
Well, Chiang Mai is kind of one of those places. It's a digital nomad hub now. I can't imagine how much more expensive it's gotten since we were there. Because we were, not that we were like early digital nomads. There were definitely other expats living there. But as far as like working on the road and moving from place to place was very much a new idea in 2016. And I'm sure it's gotten more expensive.
I'm sure.
But like Chiang Mai is a great place where there's like, how many hundreds of temples, like, or maybe there's like tons of temples, like per capita in Chiang Mai. So you can like just walk into this temple and see like what Buddhism looks like. And then you can go to this really trendy cafe and then go to a night market and eat street food. It's just this great cultural hub. And we loved that. It was one of those places kind of off the beaten path. Like we didn't mean to go off the beaten path for that trip, but we did get to see a different side that a lot of tourists didn't get to see. I think that kind of fueled what we're doing now too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had two different experiences in Chiang Mai. The first one, just because the time was much more partying. So some good nights out there. I remember some great reggae music actually on a night out in Chiang Mai.
Yeah.
And you see the night out stuff, so it's not as glamorous as the day-to-day sort of temple stuff, but you get the different side of it. But I remember doing my first ever hike in Chiang Mai in one of those overnight, sort of you go down to the villages in the mountains. And I've never hiked before, so I was hiking in shorts that were like cargo shorts and then flip-flops and like plimsolls. And I was hanging up for 5 minutes. I was like, what am I doing here? And I was sweating my ass off. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. But I got through it. And I think we're all feeling the same. You know, been for a few nights out before. One guy was sick at the campsite. Well, it's like a little village. But unbelievable experience because you get to, I know maybe some of it's put on, but you get to experience what village life is like in those jungle areas of the mountains, right? It's incredible. And maybe what little they have in terms of infrastructure to live. So definitely an eye-opener, I think, for me. Quite early on in my experience in Thailand, yeah.
Yeah, what year were you there for the first time? You said 2013?
2013. So this is even before smartphones, right? So I haven't really got any footage, but I've got a few photos of us sitting by the campsite. We're all just like absolutely knackered and like fucked from the hike, like just sitting there like just chilling out. And it's quite hot as well, right? So,
always hot.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but like hiking in Chiang Mai, my first thought was always cobras. Like they have cobras there. I don't know why that was always my fear, but I was like, I'm gonna get bit.
I think we got told about them. No, you're right. Yeah.
Were you?
But I was so heavy breathing, I didn't care. I was like, let's kill me now.
Just kill me now. Where are those tigers at?
It was always funny, like being in like the jungle, like way far from Chiang Mai, because we would run into like a local Thai person, and you could tell that not a lot of white people came by because they would always. It was like they had seen a ghost. They're like, "Did you see that?" Like
how pale they were, and then they walk up and like. The little kids were the cutest because, you know, they hadn't seen like blonde people before.
Sure.
But it was always like this really great like icebreaker because I didn't speak their indigenous language for some of these little villages and they didn't speak English. And the kids would just like walk up and touch my hair and laugh. And they thought it was so funny. And it just was like this great little icebreaker. But that was funny.
So I'm going to circle back to your food thing. I'll tell you one thing I have realised in Thailand from that trip 2013 to going back a few times since, especially the last time. I don't need a break from like street food in the evening or even lunch, but breakfast, I do need a bit of something else. And you can find avocado on toast with poached eggs in Bangkok or Chiang Mai now. So I think that's a brand new thing. Because I don't think in 2013 I'd even thought that a calf done avocado on toast with poached eggs. I don't think that was even a thing. But now I think because digital nomads, I think that they're starting to come up with those like trendy calves, right?
Yeah. I would agree with that. Breakfast is one of those that, you know, a lot of the world, especially Asia, eats savory for breakfast. Like it's like hot soup or something, noodles. And that's a hard one for me. Like I'll do it when I need to, but either I would prefer skipping breakfast or I want something bland or cool or sweeter. Like, you know, that's very American, but we like the smoothies in Thailand, like fresh smoothies every day. Oh my goodness. That's
great.
Fruit.
Yeah, it's definitely good.
It was so good. Yeah.
Okay, let's bring it together for your podcast and your YouTube, because that obviously is travel based. And so I wanted to delve into, first of all, you mentioned some of your travels. Where did the idea of doing a YouTube come together? And you've got a seriously impressive high amount of subscribers. So what's the journey been like from starting that to where you are now?
Well, let's see. Okay, Chris is the visionary in this relationship.
Okay.
So in Thailand in 2016, he wanted to do YouTube. This was like Casey Neistat era, like Casey's like revolutionizing like what YouTube could be. And Chris was like, we need to do it. And I was so shy. Like I'm such a quiet person. You may not get that, but I really am. And I was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And then 2 years later, we're living in a van, had been living in it for months. And Chris was like, Sarah, we need to just give YouTube a try.
Well, what happened was these sweet older people came up to us and they had a GoPro and they were following their dog at the campground. And I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, oh, we've got a YouTube channel and, you know, we follow our dog and post the videos of it. And they were so sweet. And then they left and I looked at Sarah. I said, Sarah, if their dog has a YouTube channel, we need to have a YouTube channel like that.
So the next day we filmed a tour of our van, which was sort of a thing on YouTube back then. It was like early van life. And we're not trendsetters, but I feel like we've sort of been in the right place at the right time on a couple of things. Yeah. And that's one of them. And so we filmed this van tour. We filmed this van tour and it ended up actually just being me. Chris did all the filming. I'm like walking through really awkwardly showing our van.
He's like Vanna White.
I am. I didn't see my future going there, but there it is. And we threw it up on YouTube, not expecting it. I was still not convinced I ever wanted to do another YouTube video. And it went viral within a week. And today it sits at like over 5 million views. And we got millions of views on that first video. And so it sort of like thrust us into like YouTube world and we weren't really ready. And it took a while to sort of like pivot to what we really wanted. Like, you know, YouTube wanted us to do van stuff, which ended up being like in the automotive category. And then we really wanted to do travel. So it was like pivoting this giant ship for like a year and a half of like, nope, you guys want van stuff, but we're going to do travel stuff. And so we just kept shoving it down their throat. And, you know, we gained like 35,000 subs from that one video. But I'd say we've probably lost most every single one of them. Like there's people who stuck around, but we've changed so much. It's been like this, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would never wish anyone to go viral. Like people like you see all the time online, like, oh, go viral, you'll do that.
Yeah.
No, you don't. Like you want the right people in your audience and who are there, because that was the hardest thing for us, was trying to convey to these people who were asking us how we use the toilet or how we wash our clothes, you know, that we don't want to answer these questions anymore because we use the toilet just like you, or we wash our clothes just like you know. And so,
going viral, it's so like you get the negative comments, but also I don't know that if I hadn't gone viral early on and been forced to kind of produce not forced, but, you know, saw that instant reaction, I don't know that I would have done it. Like I love photography and videography, but I was cool just doing it for ourselves and not sharing it. But once we had that audience and I was like, well, let's just see what happens. Like it did encourage us to keep going. So I think I am glad we went viral, but also like I see other people who've done that really slow growth, like put in the time. Every single video is like a little bit of a climb. Their audiences are so engaged. It took a long time to get that for us. So there's good and bad.
So at that point, you were living in the van. That was your life. So what was the journey from? So has that just carried on to now? Like, has that been a 6-7 year journey?
Yeah, actually, it's been that long. We started living in the van in 2018. Yeah, it's been a long time. So we started living in the van in 2018, lived in it, and then COVID hit in 2020.
Yeah.
And we were still living in the van full time. And that's when we realized, okay, like after, 2 months of that, we realized this is going to go on for a while. So we put our van up for sale and we decided to take advantage of that time to, sell that van. We turned a little bit of a profit on it and put it towards a down payment on a house, and then also bought a second van to convert during COVID.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been in a van for a while, but it's been like these natural progressions of like different rigs and different seasons. But
Yeah, and we found out that we really love traveling that way. And that's why we were doing this overlanding gig, because we like traveling slow. Like,
Yeah.
not as slow in Mexico right now, but typically we like traveling slow. And
And we have a dog, and that makes it so much easier.
yeah. And so we travel internationally with him. And but like van life, like we loved it. I feel like we know the United States so well, but there are many places that we still haven't been to and haven't discovered. But we were just like, we wouldn't be able to see these places or visit like any other time. Like, when am I ever going to be in Wichita, Kansas? You know, but
More often than what we ever thought.
I know Wichita, Kansas. I know what they had, like I know that, but like even still, like Utah and California and Washington and all that. Yeah, we were able to discover places that we would have never been able to visit.
We like nature a lot. Like, we love, we're kind of like, a lot of van lifers do it because they really want to do like only national parks or like really rural areas. We also really like cities too. Like, we like the culture, we like the food and the hustle and bustle of that.
Yeah,
so,
I'm the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So we liked the van because it was small enough to get into cities and we could go see the cities when we wanted to. But it was also rugged enough that we could go and park on these national forest and BLM spots that had these epic views. And I think that's our current truck, which is a Land Cruiser, sort of like a van, but, a little bit different looking. And it allows us to do the same thing. Like, we can park outside Mexico City, go into the city, and then go back out to the mountains.
So a lot of your early content is US based, sort of seeing the country that you're from.
Yeah, our early stuff was all U.S.
All U.S. We did drive through Canada to get to Alaska because we were like, that's a huge trip,
Up this way.
Yeah. And then once COVID kind of happened, that part, we were like, well, so the very first international trip we took on our channel was right before COVID, and it was to Ireland.
We were on the plane home
when they closed the country.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so it put a damper on us. And then we're like, all right, so we'll just build out another van, while we're waiting. So we did that. And then we were like, we want to travel internationally now. And so we flew to Mexico, did some Mexico stuff. And then we flew to Brazil. And then we did Korea and Iceland. And then, and still U.S. stuff based, through there. But we
want to see the world.
Yeah, we want to see the world.
Yeah, that's the journey, right? You've got your for like early years, I guess that's your base. But then if you're traveling, you just want to go other places, don't you? So how do you decide? Let's imagine you're not doing this Pan American road trip, which we'll come back to in a minute. How did you decide which country to go to, and how did you even cope with maybe getting content? Because the big thing about YouTube is that I've found, especially this year, with doing it myself as well, is how do you go and travel and balance between enjoying it and try not to worry about getting too much content? Like, how do you get that balance right?
Such a good question.
Gosh, that's so hard. I don't know that we've mastered it yet. We're still struggling with it. But what do you have to say to that?
I mean, we'll go in knowing, all right, we're going into, because like if you go to our channel, like it's mostly like it'll be like city guides, like, hey, this is what we're experiencing in this city or this part of the country. It'll be like a food tour. It'll be like impress. So we have these like little categories that we like film videos in. And what we do is we will have one specific day that we're like, we have to film, and we'll try to film during the entire trip, but it is exhausting to film the entire thing and edit while you're over there. So what we try to do is we'll have one specific date where we try to hammer out almost everything,
all the talking head,
all the talking head, all the experiences, and then we'll go through other times that we're there and just get B-roll footage and just like, hey, this is like buildings or like different cultural things or whatever.
And that's our favorite stuff to get. At least for me, that's my favorite stuff to get. Like, I don't mind talking to the camera, but I would rather get to be more artistic and take photos and B-roll and slow-mo and just get that really pretty lighting and that kind of stuff. So that's easier to grab throughout the trip. It doesn't feel like it's a distraction because we can just enjoy what we're doing. And then,
Yeah. And then I think we really like to be creative, but I think half the time the camera gets in the way sometimes. And so we've come to the mindset of like, we're just telling a story. It doesn't have to be as beautiful. So sometimes we'll whip out the iPhone and we'll film on that just to capture the moment. And, and then we'll come home. We try to come home and or have a couple weeks and just edit once we're away from there, because it can be a little difficult trying to do everything, and then you miss everything. And that's coming from like firsthand experience of being in a different country and just ended up like hating like where we're at right now, because you're just stressed and you're trying to get a video out. Yeah.
But that's like, it's a weird place because we always said we didn't want it to feel like a job, and YouTube does It is part of our income, like a significant part. We still work a day job doing like web design stuff, but part of the reason we do that is because we want to take some of the pressure off YouTube, and we're getting better and better about being like, you know what, if this video just doesn't feel like it's working, we're just going to scrap it. Like, or if we're enjoying a place too much and we can't get a video out of it because we're enjoying it so much, that's okay. And I have to say, some of our favorite places in the country, in the US at least, we don't have videos on them. So we tell people like, go to Portland, Maine, or for the longest time, like go to Seattle. Like those were two of our favorite places, but we had no video content because we'd get there, we'd be catching up with friends or hanging out and loving it. And we just wouldn't film. And it wasn't because we weren't inspired, but we just decided to choose living life instead of YouTube. So there's a weird balance between like, it's our work and we need to make sure we're getting content that's good and we're passionate about, but also like take time for ourselves because life happens once.
Yeah. And for the listeners or viewers who are watching this podcast, Chris and Sarah's YouTube channel, for me, you're like the ones I watch because I like, obviously the content, don't get me wrong, but like the way you do it. Because I'm quite new into YouTube. I'm sort of like assessing like, how am I going to do it? I'm probably a bit more like, fuck it, I'll just put it out there. Probably not as like, this has to change. Yeah. So I picked a few things up from you guys and obviously Matt and Nat, who you guys know as well. Like, I think you two couples are the people for me for YouTube, where I get to assess how you do YouTubers, and they're so impressive. I absolutely love it. And I think
there's 1,000 ways.
There's a thousand ways. There's no right or wrong way, but I like some of it's the little things you put in, which I quite like. I remember seeing one of your Mexico videos, and you had a slow-mo video, I think it's in the town square, of this woman maybe just like next to some pigeons. It's like slowed down to get that like epic feel. You see like the water drops or whatever coming from the fountain. It's like, oh, those little things get me. I'm like, I need to try and get that sort of footage, you know? Like, really, really impressive,
Yeah, there's something nice about filming B-roll because you really do have to slow down to be still and to watch things and look for the details. And that's one reason why I love it, is it allows you just to like, you get to be a part of it for a minute.
And I think it allows you on the post end, like when you're editing it, like you can make any story you want. If you just capture a bunch of B-roll, like you can at least describe the feeling or talk about it, narrate it, right? And then you're not having to like stress about getting that perfect like talking head or whatever.
That's one of our favorite ways to do it, actually, is because sometimes if we're just in the moment and we're loving it, that's our get out of jail card. Like, oh shoot, we didn't film that. We'll just voice over it later. And it ended up being this really great style thing that people have said, I really like that. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, it's easier too. So just do that more often.
And I think the one thing, and we're awful at this, and we're trying so desperately to get better and better, but the one thing about YouTube and anything is just consistency. Yeah, it's just posting every week or however long you want to do it.
We're the worst at it. I mean, we've been on YouTube for how many years now? 5 or 6 years, and I think we just crossed our 200th video. Aren't there 52 weeks in a year? So obviously we've missed a lot of weeks.
We've missed quite a few weeks.
I'm catching you up.
Yeah. I mean, we took off months at a time. Like, it's not that we didn't want to be creative. There were times, I mean, COVID, obviously, like a lot of people still travel during COVID. We couldn't. Like, we were partially building out a van, partially we just didn't feel right about traveling back then. And so we ended up missing like most of 2020. We ended up missing a lot of 2021. And then even last year, we were between seasons of trucks and trying to get on the ship for the Pan American. And we ended up missing months there too. But, but keep going.
You keep going. And like that, I think that's kind of what makes the human aspect of YouTube, because you see so many different creators will burn out after a while.
Of course.
Because
you can see the light in their eyes just like
because like you're not just a YouTuber, you're the the cinematographer, you're the editor, you're everything. And then you're doing all these different jobs, and you post it and then you get 18 views and you're like, cool, and it's just
tell me about it.
Yeah.
But then we see some channels and they've got, their views and their consistency are just like top notch and they are just like killing it. But they're killing it so much that there's all this pressure built up and they have to keep posting and keep posting. But you can see, like, especially in the travel network, there's a few creators we see, and it's just like the life has been sucked out of because they're the travel planner and they're the filmer, and like they do all of it. But you can see like the passion's just not quite there like it used to be. So sometimes, like, even though YouTube doesn't like you to take a break, if you need a break, take a break. Like, I can't tell you enough how much that's helped us, and to just feel that freedom of like, you know what, we still have other jobs to pay the bills. We'll be okay.
I think the problem with travel creators, I don't know if you feel this, is it's not like you're reviewing a game or a TV show. If you don't travel, you need to come up with something pretty creative to get a video out, because then what are you going to talk about? So I've actually run into this problem now as we speak, because I've pretty much videoed about all my year trip last year. I've just about ran out of content for that, and I've covered all of it. I could maybe redo the road trip. That's on my mind. But based on your guys' advice about making it a longer video, like an hour or something. But yeah, I'm like, So what do I do now? So you have to get creative, right? If you're maybe traveling locally or you're not international traveling.
Yeah.
For me, what's different for me is I've done what you said a minute ago, where I kind of done the voiceover after the fact. So sort of in my mind, at the back of my mind, I'll get this video because I think I might need it. So I got all this footage from last year, but it's all voiceover stuff, pretty much hardly anything in the camera for me speaking into it. But my biggest challenge now is my trip in November. Like, how am I going to try and do this YouTube thing for the first time ever where I'm actually traveling and I've got that in my mind? So I'm like, oh, do I speak to the camera every day? Do I do the same as last year? Not quite sure what to do. So that's the journey I'm on at the minute.
Yeah.
Just always hit record. I mean, that's something we're still guilty of just, even if you're not sure you're going to use it, like, you know, you've seen us, you just mentioned the longer form videos. So when we were home for longer than we expected this summer, we started re-releasing some of our old videos. Like we did our Korea series, or we didn't do Ireland, but Iceland. But there were like little segments of talking head and stuff that we had never used. They never fit into the original videos, but we had all this extra footage of places that we had filmed that sort of worked really well in this longer form video. So even if you're not sure you're going to use it, just record it. Like
that was like two things. Like, one, we released these longer videos, but YouTube liked that. Like they were over an hour long. And so YouTube, like the Brazil video especially, is like, we released it 4 weeks ago and it's sitting at like 100,000 views over. Released it to new people who had never seen our channel before.
Oh, there you go.
So our local audience, our main audience, was like, hey, I've seen this before. And we're like, yeah, it's okay. Take a break. You don't have to watch it. But new people came in, which is awesome. But then, you know, for like you traveling, going, you know, your trip that you're doing, always come back to like Ryan Van Duzer. He's another YouTuber and he bicycles and he like does these amazing videos. And I remember asking him, I was like, hey, like, how do you do this? And he's like, I don't want to record, but I just hit record. And and it's not, and he's like, even if you're not talking to the camera, like you don't have to talk, just record, like just have it. You're not going to regret having it. And this guy, I mean, he'll do a 10-day bicycle trip and he'll get 10 videos out of that trip. And I just like, it blows my mind.
Just hit record. And there's a quote by Michael Scott in The Office that we sometimes laugh about, because sometimes Chris will just hit record and he'll put the camera on me and I just start monologuing. Like the quote of Michael Scott is like, sometimes I start talking and I have no idea where the sentence is going. And I'm like, that's us. Like, you just have to start talking and then eventually you kind of find your thought along the way. But I may do this one monologue of just like rambling thoughts, and then Chris will use 3 different sections of it throughout the video. So I mean, just hit record.
Just hit record. Yeah, you can make something. Out of nothing.
Just describe what you're seeing, because so much of, you know, like when you're watching YouTube, you only get to, you know, engage a couple of their senses. They can't smell or, you know, fully feel what a place is like. But if you can describe it for them, like one of our favorite comments that we get is from people who are at home and maybe they have terminal illnesses, or they're just too old and they can't move like they used to, or they're, you know, their budget's not quite there to travel yet. They like to watch and say, I may never get to see those places, but I feel like I've been there because of your videos. So between like the showing of the places and the sounds and like all that, we try to convey to people like, hey, this is what we're feeling, so they can be along for the ride.
And even for your trip, like I would be super interested if you recorded every day. The end of the day, you'd be like, this is what happened, you know, and you just sit there and you're like, you just talk about it and be like, almost like a video diary. And then you could take that and then you could edit it that way. That way you're not having like, you know, maybe there's a parade in the middle of the street and you're like, yeah, I'm in a parade. Like that's one thing if something's actually happening, but maybe you walked and you explored the neighborhood and nothing really happened. Well, tell that to the camera, like as a video diary, and then you could use that as voiceover later. So
I think there's 3 parts to it. I think the trip is the videoing like you guys, you know, I don't know, you take a picture of someone in the square or video of someone in the square or whatever. And there's talking into the camera, like you said, the travel vlog aspect, if you like. And then there's the podcast aspect. I think I'm trying to get sorted as well, which I want to come into for you guys. You're a bit like me. Alongside your YouTube, you do a podcast as well, which is crazy.
Yeah.
We are crazy. I don't know what we're doing.
We are.
Can you tell?
We need one more thing.
Can you tell people what your podcast name is and what your premise is?
It's called What No One Tells You. And our podcast is just kind of like our life. Like we invite our friends in and we talk about whatever topic we really want to, but it mostly has travel components into it. And sometimes that's us talking about our experiences somewhere in the world, or other times it's talking to people like you, James, and hearing your stories. And because I think at the end of the day, we just want to hang out with friends and hear their cool stories. So
I'm on my own. I need to hang out with some people.
Just trap them. Yeah, it's like our excuse of like, hey, would you guys come on our podcast? But really, it's just our way to talk to people we've always wanted to talk to.
Yeah.
But the idea was originally that we'd bring people on with different expertise of, they could tell us something about their niche that we may never have been told. And that was the idea. But half the time it just like ends up being us just learning about their life and something. We just like talking to people. That's all it is.
Yeah, we're very similar in our mantras. I think we interview people, want to hear their story. And you're week to week as well, aren't you? You release weekly. So
yeah, we try.
Yeah. Next question is, how would you get that going? Because one thing I learned last year with podcasting and traveling is it's bloody hard. Especially when you're trying to interview someone. If you're not doing solo episodes and you're trying to interview someone, I don't know how you guys find the time to fit that in with your YouTube and your travels. Like, how do you mitigate that?
That's hard, especially when people are in all different time zones around the world.
Yeah.
I mean, traveling is just, it is really hard to nail down people to get. Like, we're all over the place. But yeah, we have a mobile podcasting studio in our truck. And then right now we're actually at our co-working space in Chattanooga, which has a free podcast studio to use. So between being on the road and being home, we're usually able to get a podcast in.
And what like our secret is, like, we try to, like, within 2 weeks, well, like, hey, like, we've got 2 weeks, let's try to get as many guests within these 2 weeks as possible, and that way we can just kind of batch it and have 3 months of content for later down the road. Easier said than done. But yeah,
our limit is 2 interviews a day. We've learned like that is our max for being able to produce quality. Like, our episodes usually tend to be like 45 minutes to hour 15, 30 at the least. But yeah, after 2 interviews, I'm just completely zapped, because you want to be on and you want to be like giving quality to each person and really engage in the conversation. But after like 2.5 hours, I'm done. We've got a limit of how many we can produce in 2 weeks, but you can produce months of content if you really organize it well.
Yeah, I agree with that. 2 a day max. I'm like you. I've actually learned this probably in my last year, I'd say, where I do batch recordings. So I will give myself 2 months off of any interviews. So I know end of October, like no more for November or December. And I'm saying no next year. Because I think you do need that break, because you do get a bit of burnout, especially if you do long format.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I enjoy podcasting when I'm doing it, but for some reason, the anticipation of leading up to interviews, sometimes it stresses me out. Like, I don't know, it's a lot of pressure. So having it all, like, if I'm like mentally focused on that for a week, it helps me.
Well, like, and you as the host, James, like, you're like on your end, you're like, all right, I've got to make sure I've asked interesting questions. And then you're, like listening, trying to like build off of that. Like, it's a lot of work, like what you're doing, and it's just kind of like, especially
fun work, though.
It's fun work, and like we shouldn't.
I'm not complaining. I'm saying like it's just like working the brain in a different way. Like you have to get yourself turned on socially.
It's like you're hosting a house like party, and you have to always be on. Like you're just like yeah.
I think guesting is super fun, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
As you guys are now, I mean, it takes the pressure completely off, because you know what's coming normally, unless they do questions in advance, and it's just like reading off travel stories or anecdotes. Well, that's brilliant, isn't it? I think guessing's pretty good fun as well.
Oh yeah,
this is so much easier in my opinion for this side of
as soon as we shut this computer, it's out of our hands. Like whatever. James will do whatever he wants to with it.
Okay, I want to circle back round, because you do YouTube, you do your podcast, you're traveling, sort of like this might be a bit of a hard question really based on what's happened, but you're going to go back to Mexico, and imagine, at some point. So what is the actual aim with your Pan American Highway trip? Because we didn't really go into details, maybe what's in store for the future.
So the idea is to get to Argentina, and then we would love to see every country in Central and South America, with the exception, I guess, of Venezuela. Like, we just want to drive. Like, we're doing the Pan American, because that's just like this easy goal for people to follow. A lot of people know what that is, and if you don't know, it's the longest road in the world. You can get from Alaska to the end of Argentina, so almost to Antarctica practically, on one road, except for the Darien Gap. So once we get to Panama, we'll have to ship around the Darien Gap to Colombia. We set a goal originally of we would love to be in Patagonia this winter, because our winter in North America is really their summer. So you have a small window when you're as far south as Patagonia, and the winds and the weather's crazy, but that's not going to happen. So we're looking right now at thinking, okay, we're probably going to be in South America for at least the next year and a half. But yeah, we're just taking it a day and a country at a time. But that's sort of the plan. We'll probably take off next summer again, just to come home to kind of mix up the content, because we don't want to.
That was something that we heard from other overlanders too. They're like, you have to schedule breaks from your rig, because you will go crazy.
You'll burn out.
For a while.
Yeah. So we're thinking, what can we do during the summer when it's, summer in the Northern Hemisphere? And, maybe that's a good break, because our truck doesn't have AC, and around then we'll probably still be in the jungles.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Yeah.
Big
lesson learned last year. That was.
You're going to experience it soon. You'll be there. No ACs can be raw, but stay at a time.
Okay, cool. And are you going to go to TravelCon in
Yes.
March?
Yes.
Actually, we just talked to Philip today.
So you'll be the first to know that we're actually speaking again next
Hey,
year. So
that's good.
yeah, TravelCon. Yeah, so
It'll
be fun.
Was it the first one I saw? I think you might be the first speech I saw at TravelCon.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Oh wow.
I think so. Yeah, this year. That was great. No, I loved it. Yeah, very inspiring.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
It was a learning curve for us. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, we'll be at TravelCon. I'm
Yeah.
excited to be there. Tucson.
Tucson, Arizona.
Sunny, warm.
Never
We
heard
are
of it
you,
until
are
they
you,
mentioned
will
it.
you be there?
Yeah, I'll
Oh,
go.
really?
100%. Yeah,
Cool.
I might even try and get Emma along because she's like half knitting, half travel, right? So it kind of fits
Yeah.
into that travel niche. So that'd be quite good.
She should come.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that'd be
That'd be
so
great.
fun. I'm excited to catch up with both of y'all again.
I think
Person.
we should do a podcast where we bring our microphones and do it like in person. Get some other people
We
in.
should
Be a
totally do
laugh,
that.
wouldn't it?
That'd be so fun to do like a group podcast.
We
Yeah.
should totally.
That-
Yeah, absolutely.
Like pass the microphone. We have
Well-
our portable podcast next. Maybe we do that.
well, yeah. Let's do this. We'll make it
Yeah.
happen.
Like round table.
Yep.
Like, okay, cool.
Yeah, that's
I like
awesome.
that idea.
Okay.
Okay.
We're
Cool.
going to finish the episode with a few things. I have a quick fire travel question feature at the end, which we'll come to. So get ready for that. And
Okay.
before we get into that, can you tell the listeners and the viewers websites, social medias, and when they can find your YouTube and your podcast?
Yeah. So we're mostly Chris and Sarah across everything. That's Sarah with no H. I'm very particular about that, but so is the internet.
Yeah, Chris and Sarah. Think of Madonna or Prince. That's
We're
Chris and
just
Sarah.
Sarah.
Yeah.
That's it. No, chrisandsarah.com. And we have a travel blog where we share like travel guides. That's pretty much our core information. So while our YouTube and stuff has information, a lot of that we like to keep inspiration and really like memory based and cinematic, that kind of thing. So if you want like our best recommendations of places, go to the website. We're on Instagram, which is sort of where you get like the behind the scenes daily stuff. So Chris and Sarah _ there. And then YouTube is Chris and Sarah. And that's where we share our travels, which is currently the Pan American.
Great. And I'll put those links in the show notes. One quick
And
question
our
about
podcast.
Oh, yeah. As a guys podcast, yeah.
We do too many things right now. We gotta slim the list down.
And so, if you want more of us, whatever.
They may have had enough by now.
They've had enough
Okay.
after this podcast. They're like, I don't want to listen to
They are.
ever again.
But the podcast is on all the available normal streams, right? So Apple Podcasts,
Yeah.
Spotify, and
Yeah.
YouTube. So I'll
Yeah.
put the links in the show notes. Who's coming up on the podcast before we go into the questions?
Who is coming up? No,
Currently-
I think we're towards the end of our stuff back.
Yeah,
So that's a great question.
We have some guests lined up, but we currently, the next episode is a local coffee shop owner here from Chattanooga,
Oh.
but they do some really cool things with
Travel.
They travel and work with farmers in like Colombia and Brazil
Amazing.
and Mexico. And then yeah, we're really excited about that.
They're some of our good friends. And so that was actually is that the only in-person interview we've ever had?
We've had one, that was our second in person, but
That was fun.
it was a lot of fun. We don't really we would love to do more in person, interviews,
Yeah.
but it's always hard.
It's hard when you live in a small town too.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I did learn when I went to Podcast Movement very quickly is I got the last slot at their little mobile studio by Yap Media, called Yap
Yeah.
Media. And they had a little podcast studio with 2 proper microphones. The video cameras are all there. The nice sofa. Someone was watching us doing an episode. It's really good fun. That's my next episode coming out. Just like a professionally done episode where I don't have to edit.
Yes.
And it's video and audio. So I'm looking forward to seeing the results of that. Yeah, that's a good experience. Yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
wait to check that out. That'll be fun.
In-person stuff is fun if you can swing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish we could. Wish we could be in person right now, but you're in Vancouver.
Oh, let's do it. March. That'll come.
It's March.
March.
March,
You might
when
still
I
be in
get
Mexico by that point. Who knows?
back. Oh, I hope not.
We may
Gosh, don't say
by next March we're gonna be crossing into Belize, baby.
by the time we retire, we'll be to Argentina.
Hilarious.
Gosh.
Okay, quick fire travel questions. Let's go. So I don't want you to really think about these. This is what comes to mind. And as you're a couple, it's an interesting dynamic. So I'm going to give you one each and one combined on some of these questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to start off with 3 favorite places between you. So you can have one each and one combined that you travel to.
Iceland.
Okay.
Iceland.
Glacier, Montana.
Glacier National Park.
Yeah. Glacier.
And then together,
Um,
what would you say? Thailand.
Thailand. Yeah.
Is that
Okay.
how you wanted it? Is that the right format?
Yeah, let's do that. Why not?
Okay, cool.
Quick catch up.
Okay.
Her heartbeat is up right now.
I know, yeah.
This is stressful. Yeah.
I'm a good test taker.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question is, tomorrow, no rules. You can fly to anywhere. Which 3 countries that are new would you check out?
Ooh.
3 new countries.
Uganda.
Australia.
Finland. Oh, sorry. That was more than I got a whole list going.
Yeah.
New Zealand. I don't know. This is so
Do
hard.
3 each on that one because there's so many countries. Do 3 each. That's fine.
Okay. New Zealand, Uganda, in Finland.
All right. I would do Australia, South Africa, and Japan.
Got it.
I love that you held up your fourth finger for your third. You're like, 1, 2, 4. Okay.
Okay. Are you sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
God, you are in a minority there. Let's do 3 favorite cuisines worldwide.
Thai.
Well, what cuisine? Like,
You mean like nationality cuisine or like actual dish?
give me the dish.
You can be as
The
broad
dish?
or as granular as you like.
I have to be broad. I don't like specifics. You go. I don't know. I'm panicking.
What's the boiled chicken in Thailand?
Oh, khao man gai. I love khao man gai. Just very plain, very basic. I love trying new foods and all the different flavors, but I actually really like plain food. Just like simple.
Same.
I could probably eat a PBJ sandwich for the rest of my life every day.
Fish and chips.
Fish and chips.
From Ireland. That thing was good. Yeah.
And then tacos. Even though I'm a little burned out right now, we eat a lot of tacos in our daily diets.
Okay. And if tomorrow you're going to live somewhere for a year and it's not your home country, where are you going to live?
Thailand.
You say Thailand? Sure, we'll go Thailand. I think that's just really on the brain.
Okay.
Yeah, Thailand.
Sounds like it.
We'll
Okay.
do Thailand. Yeah.
If you could sit anywhere in the world with a cup of coffee and watch the world go by for an afternoon, where are you going to sit?
Ooh. Right now, Amsterdam. I think that sounds fun. Cycling, people on bikes, good cafes.
Japan.
Okay.
Cool.
Any combine? Yeah, that's fair enough. One each. Yeah.
That was a hint of judgment from James. Okay.
No,
you
it's
failed
great,
that one.
yeah. I don't think I had the answer for that one, so that's good. What about the country who's got the best coffee?
Oh, that's a great. So we've heard that Finland has the best coffee, but
Well, they drink more coffee per capita.
yeah.
That doesn't mean they produce.
Well, that doesn't mean they produce it. I mean, the best coffee, like hands down, that I have had is either from Guatemala or
I really love African coffees, like Rwanda.
really?
Yeah, I do. I like their kind of earthy flavors.
So the thing, like, what's really interesting, and maybe we're diving into this, but Brazil is the largest coffee producer in the world. You know, they do that, but their coffee within the country is not very good.
Sometimes.
Sometimes
It's hard to
because
find
they
good.
typically export it out to the other countries, and so the Brazilian coffee that you have there is really hard to find.
Yeah, but we did-
Someone said the same thing about Colombia on my podcast yesterday.
Yeah, I would bet. I think it's just because it's expensive, so they can make more money if they export
Yeah,
it versus
of course.
keeping it in the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, cool.
A favorite landmark can be nature or man-made.
Golly, these are hard, James. Mount Rainier. I love Mount Rainier.
Kind of want to be a smart aleck, but
What are you gonna say?
I was going to say the Buc-ee's statue.
Oh my
gas
God.
station down the road. I won't say that.
That reaction was funny.
Gosh, shut up.
Favorite landmark, and
The Gangnam Style statue in Korea.
actually that was pretty cool.
Yeah, so
the
that,
Gangnam
got a photo in front of that.
Yeah,
There you go.
I would equate that right next to the Buc-ee's statue.
That is
So
culture
that's me.
right
Yep,
there.
That's
Got
culture.
very, very cultural here. Okay. What about a place you didn't like on your travels?
I don't know that I didn't not like the place. I didn't care for the people. We had some bad. No, I shouldn't say that either because we had some really nice people too. Ireland was a rough experience for me, actually. And I don't
really?
know if that was because I
Ireland?
remember I really loved it. The way we got there was somebody like let us stay in his Airbnb for free, and he was incredibly nice. And like his family lived in the town, and we had such a great experience there.
Mm.
But we also had some really negative experiences in Ireland.
Mostly like in a pub. Like some old man had just had a few too many Guinnesses.
And he was just like, I mean, we get it. Nobody likes Americans around the world, but like he was really letting me know, and I was just like, okay, I'm done. So,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I think that's my only negative travel experience was Ireland. I want to go back and give it a shot again, though.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you places in US that I'm like not a fan of.
Missouri.
Missouri is probably one of them. Like Missouri, the entire state. Like
That's unfair, though. There's good places everywhere.
there are good places, and St. Louis is actually a cooler town than what people let on. The whole state of Missouri is just kind of like, I'm sorry.
You know, there's people from Missouri listening.
I know. I love you, Missouri. Prove me wrong, but go on from there.
Okay.
Okay. Just a portion of time. We've got 2 questions left. Actually, one bit of advice traveling with a dog. I know we don't talk about Kramer that much, but I love Kramer.
Yeah.
Met him. Great guy. One bit of advice traveling with a dog.
You're going to have to travel slow. You're going to have to travel slow, and it matters what airline you fly. He fits under the seat from most airlines, at least American-based. But yeah, just do your research. That's like 3 pieces of advice in one.
Yeah.
Do your research. It takes a lot of research, but when in doubt, just talk to the vet, too.
But he's such a great conversation starter no matter where we are in the world.
Everybody likes
Everybody, typically, except for the camp guy, loves
Yeah.
dogs.
He's on his own there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If somebody doesn't like dogs, we're probably not going to like them. So it works out
Yeah.
fine. Just kidding. Kidding.
Okay, and one sentence each as to why someone should travel outside of their comfort zone if they're a little bit scared or nervous.
What's the worst thing that could happen? I mean, you could go down that rabbit hole a lot, but like, let's just say like you travel to this country and you're kind of scared. Like, is it because that country is scary and like there's, like some terrorist group there, or is it really just because it's the unknown and you've heard horror stories? Because I think for us, what we have found in 99% of our travels is that everybody is just friendly and they want to live like a human. And very rarely do you stumble upon somebody that is just wreaking havoc or evil because they want to.
Yeah, I'm a very fear-based person too. Like I am guilty of letting my fears take over. So travel can constantly be a test for me. And I love traveling and I wouldn't give it up, but it has been affected by fear. And I remember I was reading this book one time by Don Miller, and I can't remember which book it was in, but it was something along the lines, the quote was like, what if you look back in like 20 years and the bad things that you were fearing didn't happen? Like, go ahead and like essentially saying like, do the things in spite of the fear, because more than likely it's never going to happen. And I always have to remind myself of that, like, but it was the best that could happen kind of thing. So
yeah. Great. That's a great way to finish the podcast episode. Chris, Sarah, this was such fun. It's been a while getting you guys on. I'm trying to find you in the world, but now I'm so glad we had an opportunity to come on the podcast, have a great chat. It's just been a laugh a minute, must admit.
Yeah, this was fun.
Thank you so much for having me, James.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.